Hey guys, and welcome back to Brexit. Brexit England, Northern Ireland, and Eastern Europe. And in Brexit England, it is 75 years since the birth of the National Health Service. But first of all, we have to say belated happy 4th of July to all of our American viewers. So, belated happy 4th of July. Because I was going to do this video yesterday, but I thought, you know what, because today is 75 years of the NHS, I thought, I better do it today. So we could say a belated request to the Americans for yesterday, the 4th of July, which is a very important day for them because they had some type of independence, but I don't know who from. So we've got 75 years since the birth of the NHS, and we say 75 years, of black, brown people, and and people from we had people from all over the world, right, who have helped to build this service. In the same way, these people was called over to help build this country after the Second World War, and we was and the NHS, right, is a service that has been built, right, by black and Asian people and other people from all over the world, whether they're from Paraguay or whether they're from the Philippines, or we've had people from all over the world help to build this service, right? And then what do we get? The new conservatives, people who say, you know what, we want to send people who look like you to Rwanda. We don't want people like you coming over here and looking after our elderly. This is what we'll be given, the new conservatives. My whole life, has lived in the shadow of things like no Irish, no blacks, no dogs. If you want a nigger neighbour, vote Labour. Now, and people often look at me and they think to themselves, oh, well, you know what, he's always talking this country, he hates this country. I don't hate this country. No. There's a lot of the people in it, right, that are just like, backward hillbillies. But the poor kids now, they have to put up with people like honest Bob Jenrick. Right. A man who tried to steal £40 million from the British taxpayer, who would turn up at an asylum centre and say, you know what you need to do? You need to paint over those murals of cartoons because we don't want the children to feel welcome. Because, the honest truth here, that's the Britain I live in. I live in a Britain that's I was listening to the radio last night, and one guy on the radio said, "Oh, we are Britain. We are like a small C conservative." And I thought, probably right, absolutely right, because the Britain that I live in, right, is a Britain that's full of food banks, a Britain where I've had to feed a man, right, who has got something like cerebral palsy because he's in a wheelchair. Right, but he sat outside the KFC begging people to buy him food, and I've had to buy him food 3 times. I haven't seen him for ages now. Right, so he might be dead, or or maybe they might have maybe sorted out some type of benefits for him. But there's no way that he should have been outside a KFC asking people to buy him food. But that's the Britain. That's the Britain that I live in. A Britain where you've got a senior politician can go to an asylum centre and tell them to paint over murals of cartoons because he doesn't want the children to feel welcome. That is the Great Britain. A Britain where people are swimming through shit. That's the Great Britain. Right? I don't know what this is with the small C conservative, or these people trying to tell us, oh well, Britain is a very welcoming place. Yeah, they were so welcome, right, that our senior politicians will tell people to paint over murals of cartoons. Dishonest politicians who tried to steal £40 million from the British taxpayer. And these people will tell you, oh, we are so nice. We are genuinely nice. We are welcoming and warm. Warm nothing. Capital C conservative, that's right. Because you know what? When you're in a country where people who are unelected are Michael Foot, Gordon Brown, Ed Miliband, Jeremy Corbyn. Unelectable. People who are electable, Margaret Thatcher. How do you think that's going? How has that gone for the country? Margaret Thatcher is electable. How do you think that's gone for the country? We've got more homeless. All Margaret Thatcher's policies has given us more homeless people, highest utility costs, shit in our waterways. Margaret Thatcher's policies. More homeless people than we've ever had before. Highest mortgages, highest rent than we've ever had before. All down to Margaret Thatcher's policies. Yeah. Then what? David Cameron. David Cameron was an arse. David Cameron was what you call a weather vane or a fair weather politician. Right? Theresa May. Yeah. Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, right? Rishi Sunak. All electable. But right now you're swimming through shit. Right? You can't pay your mortgage, right? You can't pay your rent. Right? Your utility costs are sky high. Your food costs have been doubled. But those people are all electable. And if you wonder why it is, that, this country is in a complete shit state, it's because Michael Foot, right, Gordon Brown, Ed Miliband, Jeremy Corbyn are unelectable. That's why you're living in the complete shithole that you're living in. And to me, it's just a complete joke. It's an absolute joke. Do you know what I mean? 75 years of the NHS, right, and the Tories, right, have destroyed. The Tories in the last 13 years, they've taken a service that was at the highest level of satisfaction, and they have destroyed it in the 13 years that they've been in power. And they've destroyed it, because they've been privatising it bit by bit. Bit by bit, they've been privatising it. Ambulance services have been privatised. Things like X-rays have been privatised. All these, so much services. I mean, obviously the NHS, sorry, the dental services. Well, that was done from long time ago, right? But all these services, right, within the NHS, that they are privatising. They've already privatised social care for old people. They've sold off all the hospital car parks. Right? Because you know why? Because those people are electable. Yeah? Margaret Thatcher. David Cameron. Sorry, I forgot one. John Major. David Cameron. Theresa May. Boris Johnson. Liz Truss. Rishi Sunak. They're electable. And people wonder why it is they're losing the fucking NHS. Right? Because let me tell you this, right? Unless this country, right, changes tact really quick and puts in, you're probably going to have to go more extreme. Someone from the left more extreme than Jeremy Corbyn. Because look, I forgot to put in the electable lot. I forgot to put Tony Blair in the electable lot, and maybe even Keir Starmer in the electable lot. But they can go in there because they're Tories, so they can go in the electable lot. Right? It's just amazing to me how this country keeps on voting for people, right, who their only interest, right, seems to be to do damage to the people of this country. I mean, they sold off. We discussed BP the other day, 8 billion, now worth just under 100 billion. Yeah. All of our utility companies, right, millions and millions of billions of pounds going out to shareholders and to paying big bonuses. Our waterways full of shit, piss shit, condoms and tampons, and they still we're going to take it back into into government, under government control. But we're just doing that until we can find someone else to sell it to. Billions of pounds being paid out to shareholders and in bonuses, right? While people are getting ill through swimming in the water, and these motherfuckers are driving around in Bentleys and flying in helicopters. Just how does any of that work? I don't know, right? They're talking about, oh, the NHS has had more funding than any time before, but so much of that money is just going into the hands of private companies. I mean, you're talking about companies who are, who sell, if you've got like the stationery contract or something like that with the NHS, and already, that it's going to be a proper old school company, probably owned by one of the lords or someone like that, where they supply the stationery, and they're charging what, £12-14 for a ream of paper. Now, in the NHS, right, each printer in there probably goes through 2 or 3 reams of paper a day. Right. So again, those type of things is massive business, pens and whatever. But the same ream of paper that they're selling to them for 12 to £14 plus VAT, right? I can go and get that for £3. But that's what they're paying for it, and they might even be paying more than that, to be honest. Right? But that's this is like everything with the NHS it's just a complete bashful waste of money, because they've sourced so much of it out to private companies, because the private companies are owned by people who have titles in this country. The same with how much money they're paying on casual labour. They're paying out billions on casual labour. It'll be tens of millions on a daily basis that they're paying out for casual labour. Right? And but all of that is down to the people in this country voting against their own interest. In 25 years, we probably won't even have an NHS unless the people of this country do something really radical and vote in someone who's really hard left, who really just comes back and takes back all of our services. Right? That's the only way, because all of that money, right, that's coming in from our services, right, should actually be going into paying, for our NHS, to paying for social care, to paying for youth care. That's what that money should be. That's where that money should be going. That money shouldn't be going to people so they can buy themselves a new yacht. But that's what's happening. And it's been happening for so long. So if you think that like 75 years of the NHS now, right, will we get another 25 years out of it? If you continue to vote in for the Tories, then no, we're not going to. Because especially when I say the Tories, I'm talking about like your Keir Starmer type Labour as well. Because you've heard how what's his name, oh God, I'm sure he must be the Shadow Health Minister. Kit, no, not Kit. Was one of the Labour guys anyway? I think he's from like Ilford or somewhere like that. He's from, right? But he's talking about privatisation within the NHS. But it's the difference with all those people. They can all afford it. Right, so that so that's the difference with them, But the average person, right, cannot afford NHS treatment, right? Believe me, right? If they come after you for NHS treatment, right, you are going to be selling your house, right? Because that shit is really expensive. So the rest of the people are just going to be like left to die because you're not going to be able to get NHS treatment in time. These people have run the service down so badly. And then what they've done as well on the sideline, they've made the cost of living so high that now to attract people to come to this country, it's going to be very, very difficult. No one wants to come here, right, if they're going to have to pay £2,000 a month for rent. I mean, come on. Who wants to come and do that? It's a complete waste of money. And my friends, welcome back to By Any Means Necessary. Thank you so much for all your messages to me. A special thanks here to everybody who signed up my channel. I feel so blessed with so much people that signed up. So thank you so much for that. I'll go for all your messages. I'll answer as many as I can, but I will like all the messages definitely. It sounded very bitter. But, that is the state of this country, unfortunately. But today, I think actually it was yesterday, was 6 months since Rishi Sunak's pledges. And I know I can't remember all of them, but I just remember something about stopping the boats. And I said, well, how's that going for you, Rishi? It's not going very well for him because these are people with a human brain, and they're people with a human brain and an iPhone. A lot of them, you know what I mean? So they can look and see like the prosperous West, or what seems to be the prosperous West. Yeah, they can look and say, well, yeah, I want to go there, even though, you know. So the whole boat thing for Rishi Sunak is not going very well at the moment. That's not going to go well for him. But Rishi Sunak here said something yesterday about the striking NHS workers. He said it was them that caused they're causing a lot of the waiting times. I thought, you really can't just blame COVID and the pandemic, right? Because but long before, right, the pandemic, these guys had the NHS in trouble. I mean, the pandemic just come and just kicked the crap out of it. But long before, these guys the NHS was in a lot of problems, long before. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know how Rishi Sunak can go and start, after he was out beating pans and all these type of things, and now he wants to blame the striking workers. I think that Rishi Sunak didn't realise yet that, his pledges he was making was in a Brexit Britain, a Britain that has got like over £100 billion taken out of its economy because of leaving the EU. So when he was talking about how he wants to halve, because he was talking about, by now, I'm sure that, the inflation was supposed to be less than half than what it is now, what he was talking about. Because, inflation does naturally go back down, but that is not after you have just committed political suicide. After you have cut off both your hands and both your feet, right? You don't know how inflation is going to go after that. You have no clue how it's going to work after that because you've lost control of your economy. So therefore, right, it was really a really bad thing for Rishi Sunak to start pledging anything. And now you've got these new conservatives who are saying, well, they're saying all of this really radical stuff, right? But they're saying it's not aimed at Rishi Sunak. Well, it is aimed at Rishi Sunak. Of course, it's aimed at Rishi Sunak. Who else is it aimed at? They're saying it's aimed at Keir Starmer. I say, oh, when was he in power? Right. So it's all aimed at Rishi Sunak, because let me tell you, all of those guys, all of them are just looking at Rishi Sunak and saying, how the hell did that bloody Asian, and you can insert the P word right there, how the hell does that bloody Asian get to be Prime Minister and I can't get to be Prime Minister? That's what's going through those guys' mind. Right. And now, because they wouldn't have, there's no way. I mean, obviously you've got people like the ERG, the English racist group, buried well deep within the Tories, right? And they never really, used to know what they used to think, but they wasn't as bold as how these new Tories are. They was nowhere near as bold as that. I mean, obviously we knew what they thought, but they never started coming out with with a load of different propaganda saying, we don't want these people to come here, we don't want these people to come here, and we want you to do this. They're only doing that because Rishi Sunak is an Asian Prime Minister. And I do mean Asian Prime Minister at this point. But if it's coming from them, it will be that bloody Asian Prime Minister. And then you can insert the P word. But Rishi Sunak, I think is in real problems, especially with this, because they're gonna continue with all that nonsense. They're just going to continue and continue and continue. But I think a lot of people in the country are just like, well, hold on a minute. What are you talking about? I mean, when they started mentioning care workers, I think a lot of people said, what the fuck are you talking about? But that's where we are in this country. British people are some of the sickest people in Europe, and that is simply because of the state of the NHS. So we're some of the sickest people in Europe. And then we've got Rishi Sunak believes it's okay to beat up eco-protesters because he thinks it's okay for him to cheer when Johnny Burstow is dragging eco-protesters off of the, I think it was Lord's last week or the week before. right? But Rishi Sunak, I mean, even I think in a newspaper article, he's gone ahead and said, yes, this was a good thing for to do, but it's not really good for a prime minister to come out and say, what, take the law into your own hands, because now you're going to have van drivers and lorry drivers and car drivers thinking it's okay to maybe drive into a protester, and we don't want to go there. We'll just move over to America because, it was the 4th of July yesterday. And we move over to Operation Coconut. And I know what you're thinking to yourself, hold on a minute. What, you're going out to Sean Bailey and, Priti Patel and Suella Braverman? No, it's not that type of coconut. Operation Coconut is an operation, right, built around MAGA. And that is not make America great again. That is make attorneys get attorneys, because they're looking at all of Donald Trump's lawyers' phones. Everybody who's tarnished themselves with Donald Trump and people like Boris Johnson have got themselves into serious problems. I know a few of them have ended up in the Lords and as sirs, and I've got OBs and CBs and all that type of thing. Right. But the truth is, right, most of those people just end up tarnished. I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Nadine Dorries, they're always going to be tarnished with Boris Johnson, and Donald Trump's lawyers, right, I mean, some of them could end up going to prison because, the thing is, in America, the feds, they take, lying to the feds, they take all that shit really serious, and they always send people to prison for it. I mean, they do over here as well. I mean, if you attempt to pervert the course of justice in this country, right, then they certainly will take you to court for that, and you always get sent to prison for that. It's like perjury. Perjury is the same. You always get sent to prison for perjury as well. So it's very similar, So, but Donald Trump, every single lawyer this man has had, right, seems to have got themselves in so much problems. If they're not getting fined, they're getting jailed. Right, and there could be a good few more. I'm surprised that any lawyers actually want to work with him. I'm sure he must be running out of lawyers to work with all about now. And then we have Colin Pitchfork. I don't know if you know who Colin Pitchfork is, but Colin Pitchfork is a murdering, sadistic, manipulative, right, person who murdered two 15-year-old girls, raped and murdered by strangulation. And they've already let him out of prison one time, and at that time I was saying they shouldn't, he should never ever get to come out of prison again. He's too evil. He manipulated his friend to take his DNA test. He's the first person to have ever been convicted of with DNA, right? And he managed to manipulate his friend to go and take his DNA test. And I just look at that and think, that's really, because for me, I mean, if someone had said to me, listen, I need to take the DNA test, I mean, and they told me, and I knew what the case was. The case was like the rape and the murder of two girls. I'd be like, at that point, right, I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm going to, listen, I'll think about it. But the minute I leave your house, I'm going to go and see the police and say to them, listen, this guy asked me to take his DNA test. I don't know why he would do that, but he's asked me to take, because there's no way, because listen, you should not, right, there's no way that you should not, that anyone should ask you to take a DNA test and you think to yourself, well, why would they? Because the police, the police don't set people up for rape and murder. The police don't set people up for those type of crimes. They might get it wrong, right? Because your name's come up in the frame, and then you've got a police officer who they like you for it, right? And then they work the evidence around you, and then once they do that, right, it's very difficult to get out of that. As you saw with someone like Colin Stagg, who I think they found a bit of gunpowder in in a coat that he used to wear, or I don't think he was wearing a coat at the time. I think it was in one of his wardrobes or something like that. Right, but they found that, and you get gunpowder in fireworks, so so bits of gunpowder can be, I think even bits of flint, whatever, can seem to be like bits of gunpowder. Do you know what I mean? Or I don't know. I think it might be the same with a matchstick and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? Might be made out of traces of gunpowder as well. So, but that's what they found, and then they just based literally the whole case around that. Do you know what I mean? And then you had the case of even the landlord. I think one of his tenants got murdered, and they said, well, he's very creepy, so it must have been him. But it turned out it was a Polish guy, but they had already virtually convicted this guy. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, it does happen, right? But it's not police setting out to go and set someone up. Right, and that's the reason why they've got especially why they've got DNA now, because it makes it a lot more difficult for a police officer to even think about setting someone up, especially if they haven't got they'd have to plant your DNA there. Do you know what I mean? So and police officers aren't going to do that because they really want to catch the person who is the real rapist and murderer. So so for Colin Pitchfork to be able to manipulate his friend in that way, do you know what I mean? It's obvious that he can manipulate a parole board as well. Do you know what I mean? So he should never ever see the light of day again. The only thing he deserves, is a small cell and to have piss and shit put in his food every day. That's all he deserves. He doesn't deserve anything else. Do you know what I mean? He's one of the most evil, sadistic, just disgusting murderers that this country has ever seen. And he should never. I just can't believe they actually let him out before, because I mean, if he'd done something like that now, he'd get a full life sentence. But because, back in the 80s and there's probably 70s and 80s and that, it was probably, sentences was a lot lighter. And are we being ripped off by petrol companies? Do we have to even ask that question? Because they found out that the petrol companies have ripped us off something to the tune of like £900 million last year. And I feel that's just come out of my own personal pocket. But, so we don't have to really ask are these people, it's like, my next thing is, are the banks profiteering? Why don't we just speak about the community support police officer, the community support officer, right, who refused to go and intervene while some youngsters, teenagers, was getting drunk and assaulting people in co-op while shoplifting. Because I mean, that's just bad to talk about that than the profiteering. But no, we should speak about some Brexit, because Brexit because things like Allo Allo are being blamed for Brexit. I don't even know where to go with that. Do you know what I mean? That's what they're down to now. We're now blaming Allo Allo for Brexit and sitcoms like that. I can't even think of what the connection is. I have no clue what the connection is. I don't know. Let's speak about Nigel Farage, because Nigel Farage has been kicking up a real stink. Nigel Farage said, you know what, right? These people have closed my bank account down because of Brexit. Yes, they've left it a long time, but it's because of Brexit why Coots have closed my bank account down. Right? And all the newspapers and all the TV stations have been running with that. Nigel Farage, right, is a victim of cancel culture. They have cancelled Nigel Farage because Nigel Farage, right, got this country to vote for Brexit. And I tell you something, right, those woke bankers, lefty bankers, is it Marxist? Yeah, but those bankers, they must be Marxists. They want to stop Nigel Farage from having a bank account because of his politics. Or is it because he didn't have £1 million in Coots? And because that's what Coots say, you need to have £1 million within our accounts. And said no. And they did. And Nigel Farage was saying, you know what? No one will offer him another bank account, even though there's, Coots is owned by the NatWest and Coots, and they said, well, you can have we'll give you a NatWest bank account. We'll just transfer all of your money over to NatWest, and you can have one of them. But Nigel Farage wants to be at all those fancy, the Ritz and, all those, because this is the people he's hanging out with. And those people, they don't pull out NatWest bank cards. They pull out bank cards, right, where you have to have large assets to have that bank account. Bank accounts where you have to have £1 million plus in. All of those people who Nigel Farage hangs out with, yeah, they don't bank in Halifax or Barclays or the NatWest. They don't bank there. Right? They bank in one of those little exclusive banks that you see up the West End. Right? They only do banking for very, very wealthy individuals. So when Nigel Farage is pulling out his card in front of those people and they see NatWest, they'll just laugh at him and say, listen, we're not here with common people. Anyway, guys, look, I have to wrap this up because I'm not even going to say it. Do you know what I mean? Because today's 75 years of the NHS, and yesterday was the 4th of July. So those 2 days these days are really special. My friends, this is By Any Means Necessary. I'm the MC John Ribs. It was really nice to speak to you guys. Comments below.